Hello, welcome back to Trapunto. My name is Jamie. This video is all about fussy cutting for English paper piecing. It is one of my favorite things to do. Can't wait. Let's get into it. Fussy cutting is a technique that is used to highlight elements of a print in your fabric to make a new design from the print of that fabric or a combination of the two. I also break them into two categories, optical and precision. And by what I mean in those two categories is one, you're basically eyeballing it. That's where the optical comes in. So with these hexagons here, these are ruby star prints, and all I did was find the element that I wanted from that print. So the balloon dog, one of my favorites, the owl, or the soda pop bottles. And I used my fussy cut finder that I talked about in my tools video to find it in my print. And, mine are on point. So I just isolated it on the fabric, used my marker. And when I trimmed, this again does not have the seam allowance on it. So when I trimmed, I just made sure I had extra, and you can see it on the back here. But this is optical. So the nice thing about stripes and grids and gingham or plaid is it already has a line for you to follow, because all I'm really doing with these is I'm lining up the paper with one of the stripes, and then I trace around as I usually do and then cut. And then when you're glue basting or basting by thread, you just line up. You can see on my seam that I've just lined up fabric with the paper on the seam. And then that's sort of how I know where I need to be when I'm basting. And we'll get into that when I have stripes here. When it comes to precision, I have some examples on other projects that I've done. Let me zoom out a little bit here. So this is the diamond dust pillow from Paper Pieces. And there is some just generic cutting on this one with the hexagons and the colors in the middle and on the sides, because these, like the blender fabrics that I mentioned before, so these are kind of solid reading, but the prints have no direction to them. Whereas I wanted these little heart thingies, and let me zoom in on them bigger here. I wanted these to fit, so it might be a little hard to see, but these are little 1-inch triangles. And I wanted the heart little map icon things to fit in my triangles for the design. I also fussy cut this up here. And this is from the same print as the heart print, believe it or not. And so those were fussy cut. And also these stripes were fussy cut in the same way that I just mentioned before. And then if we zoom out again, so those are precision. I also have this. This is another project I did with the linework fabric from Tula Pink. So this is the Wicked Hex mini quilt from Libs Elliott. And it actually goes this way. I have both techniques. So I have optical. The skunks are optical because I just lined up where I wanted them to be in the hexagon. I didn't measure anything. Same with the lemurs. So the lemurs are on my points. I just lined up where I wanted them to be. And the zebras are the same as well. The only sort of fussy in this is similar to the hearts in the pillow. They go in rainbow order. So I have the red zebra, red triangle, orange, yellow, green, etc., all the way around. And of course, the focal point in the middle is the peacocks. And I will isolate one just so you can see how this shape is working. So hopefully you can see that. But this is one shape. And I fussy cut the peacocks pretty much exactly the same. And then when you stitch them together, you not only get the peacocks, but my hearts alternate. So I have red, green, or like pink, green, pink, green. The peacocks make their own kind of ring, and then you get kind of this snowflake in the middle. So that's what I'm talking about when we fussy cut, to have the design itself sort of be a star, but then using this design to create a secondary design in the middle. And I can show you another example of this with a quilt it's a little baby quilt. So similar kind of feel with this one. So I fussy cut, and it's basted because I'm going to try to hand quilt this thing. So ignore the safety pins. But in the middle here, let me zoom in a little bit. So again, I have one house shape. So the roof is here, and then it goes down, is the loons. But then when I cut them, I get this ring, and this is the center of my mini quilt. And then I optically fussy cut the leaves around. And when I zoom out again a little bit, I precision cut the wolves. So these are all exactly the same, even though, so these are the same because they face different ways. The middles were optical. I just wanted them to be basically the same. And then when we get to the sides, I'll show you this one because I don't have a pin in it. I am so happy with this one. So these are, and I'll show you what print they came from. These wings are two different houses. So there's a seam right here down the middle. But when I sew them together, I get this beautiful wingspan. I was just so pleased with that one. And this print, these wings, came from this fabric here. So you can see this, I know this bird wing is cut off simply because of how the fabric was, but I fussy cut it out of these birds. You can see there's two. So I took the elements here, and the way I cut them allowed me to get this wingspan here. Now, as you may have noticed with that fabric I just showed, some people don't like fussy cutting because you're turning your fabric into Swiss cheese. So let me zoom out again here a little bit. So this is, you won't be able to see, there was a polar bear here. So you can see its legs. And I fussy cut the body, which I used as a border element. So the body of the polar bear became these pieces. And then the head of the polar bear I used in this block here. So they all face in. And yeah, so some people don't like that that's what happens to your fabric. Here's another polar bear. And I have another larger piece of fabric that looks like this. So some people view fussy cutting as a little wasteful. However, I mean, I still have some pretty decent pieces in here to use. I feel that despite the Swiss cheesing of your fabric, the results are incredibly worth it. So let's look into optical fussy cutting, because that is a little less complicated than precision. So I'm going to start with the stripe. So with the stripe, as I showed before with these two hexagons, the stripe is ready to go. So if I want my stripes to be going up and down, and actually I might have something better to show you with this. So this is my hexagon. It's the same size as my sample. And this might be an easier way to show. So pretend that this is my paper here. And so what I do is I just line up, say, the bottom of this stripe with the bottom of my paper. And now these stripes are a little, they don't fit perfectly. So if that doesn't bother you, and it doesn't necessarily bother me, depending on my project, then I would trace around my paper piece. So again, just lining up at the bottom, and then I trace around my paper piece. And then when I cut this one out, I remember to leave my seam allowance. Or what you can do is, it might be a little easier to, depending on how you visualize, to line up one of the stripes with the middle of your point. So now with it being in the middle, you do have a little bit of white on either side, but you'll still get the stripe as you want it. Or you could go this way, which might be a little trickier to line things up, but you could do it that way as well. And then when you cut and baste your hexagon, it's going to look, something like this. Or if you did the other way, your hexagon would look something like this. So this is with larger, thicker stripes. These stripes, I believe, are about a 1/2 inch almost. So they're quite large. When it comes to smaller stripes, and this is a really fun one because you have colors getting involved now. Again, you can line up your shape to either be, say, on the red, and then you'll get these colors, or you could line it up on the white, or you could line it up somewhere in the middle, and then you can go from there. And the nice thing about having these different colors is if you want to only have the warmer colors or only have the cooler colors, you could fussy cut, the color range that you want out of this stripe. So I have a couple stripes here. So this is the paintbrush stripe from Ruby Star, and this is another grid, just in a different color. And you can see I did my lovely hacking and slashing. So you may be looking at this and wondering kind of where I went from, but what I'm going to do, and hopefully you can see the lines on this okay. I know they're a little pale. Ooh, there we go. That zoomed in maybe a little too far. There we go. So I'm going to look at my stripes here, and I can see there's a second horizontal stripe here. And I might want to move it over a little bit just so I get some good coverage. And that looks good to me. So I'll take my glue pen and I will glue just as I did in my glue basting video. And you'll see again why the hacking and slashing is completely fine, because I know I have a little funny ear there. And take off a little bit of that excess there. Then when we turn around, we have our grid hexagon. And depending on your project, you might want to have it this way or this way. The project that these hexagons are for, the flowers will be on point. So this is probably how I'm going to do mine. Just have my grid looking, nice and grid-like. And then same with these stripes. So even though the stripes are not solid, some of them, I think I just use this one But even if I've had these sitting for some time, so even if you don't remember, that's the nice thing about stripes too, is if I think I lined up with this one, I can make sure I have enough on top bottom. Or if I really want to keep a little bit more of this solid one, I can move it down and I still have, this is still plenty of seam, even though it may look a little small. But I think I'm going to have, I like the sort of the ragged edge of these paintbrush strokes. So I'm going to line up with this down here and glue as we do. So again, there we go. Lovely basted, stripy hexagon. Okay, so let's get into precision. And the first thing I'm going to show is using the mirror. So this one is from Marty Mitchell. They are 2 mirror tiles, as I showed, with duct tape. You might be able to make your own. However, it seems that everybody in the EPP industry has their own. So Marty Mitchell has one, Sue Daly has one, Lila Bell Lane has them. I know Paper Pieces just came out with one. So they're very easy to find in the English paper piecing realm. They are also fairly common in quilting in general because people will use these when they're doing kaleidoscope blocks or one block wonders. So you can find them in most quilting stores. And for English paper piecing, I like to use them for the precision. And there are tools that I have made / found that are very helpful when doing mirror work. So Lila Bell Lane has her own line of fussy cutting viewers, she calls them. So this one is for the Penelope, and that was this project here. So this is a mini Penelope. As you can see, this is a house block here, so you can kind of see the shape there. And this is what I use to cut the loon blocks. When you're using your fussy cutting viewers, you need the mirror. So the thing with the mirror is, and these beautiful, lovely viewers, is you have your mirror propped up like so. And the viewers, so the point of your shape and the mirror is going to be on these lines. So we're going to move this to be here. And then you can see, and I'll move it back on my table a little bit more. So you can hopefully see how this is kaleidoscoping into that shape. And so then you don't have to waste fabric trying to match things when you are trying to cut stuff. So let's get this peacock fabric in here. So if I were to be cutting this house shape and I wanted to see how the peacocks, and I think I'd want them to maybe face inward at each other. Let's get one that isn't too badly wrinkled here. And so if I wanted to look like that, you know, or maybe even come up this way, but I wanted to see how that's going to look with 4 of them, I can use the mirror to see how that's going to look. And as you can see, you're getting a little kind of plus sign with the peacocks in here now, but that looks kind of cool. But you can also kind of, you know, play around with it a little more. And if you don't want to use the peacocks at all, let's say you want to see how a design element in here, in these flowers, might look. Now, the house might not be the best shape for this, but you get the gist. And again, you can put your mirror in there and see how the 4 together are going to look. And then, so going off this idea, I made my own fussy cutting finders just with some cardstock. So we'll use this one here. So let's say I have a 2-inch tumbler. Now I know these ones don't have the lines on it, but I'm just going to line up my mirror with the sides. So say I want the little head. And hopefully you'll be able to see. Might be a little tricky to see on camera, but you can kind of see. Let me move you down a little bit more here. So you can see how it is telescoping in there. And that's what it would look like if you're using 2-inch tumblers. Now, let's say you wanted to do 6-point diamonds. So get the head in here, grab the mirror, line it up, and now you can see how the 6-pointed diamond is going to look. So the mirror is a really great tool to see how your blocks are going to kaleidoscope like that. And you can do the same thing with stripes. So let's grab our black and white stripes. So again, with the stripes, I would say with the diamond, you might want to match it in the middle. And let's see what it looks like with the diamond. Isn't that neat? I just love this stuff. It really makes you look and consider at fabric prints in a different way, and you can do so many different things. So those are the black and white stripes. And similarly, we can see what that looks like with these rainbow stripes. So let's just have the whole spectrum in here. So let's focus on this pink one because that's really popping out at me. So let's put pink in the middle. So put pink in the middle. And then grab your mirror. See? And I also find it helps me visualize because I wasn't thinking that this orange was going to mirror over there on the other side or this red would mirror over here. So that's one thing that can help you consider and be like, oh, well, I don't know if I want that much orange or I want that much red, or I don't know if I want pink to be the star. Because to me, the pink is immediately jumping out because it's in the middle. So maybe I want to shift it over and I don't know, let's see what this bright blue looks like. It's going to be the same. So we're going to have more blue on this side and green on this side. But if you wanted to have different stars for different color palettes, and see it's the same fabric, but you get such a different feeling from it just with changing color. And again, you would have to fussy cut this, and I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. But this is sort of why it's a magic mirror. It's like magic. So you can use the mirror with a bunch of shapes. So even your hexagon you can use in here. And let's see. Let's do it with, again, this nice bright blue. Now, and it also depends on the angle. So this is on point, but if you're making a flower, your petals are going to go around this way and your middle is going to be here. You're going to line it up like this. And hopefully you can see that okay. So you can see how we're getting the green to be on the side and the blue to be out. So it's quite an interesting ombre. Or you can change it to be like this. And then you're going to get something like that. So we've been playing around with the magic mirror. So what happens when you find the sweet spot with your magic mirror and you want to replicate this design? So that design would be, I found it really cool. So let's just pretend we want to have our peacock in a jewel shape, like I did with my mini hex quilt. I'm gonna line it up there, take out our mirror, and make sure that this is where we want it to be. And just pull that up and maybe down a little bit so you can see what I am seeing here. Now, how cool is this? This is why I get excited about English paper piecing. So you can see, and I'm sorry for the glare, there is plastic on here, but for good reason. So what I would do is really make sure that this is where I want it to be. You can see we've got a secondary design going on in here with a little flower. So I saw this on Tina Craig's channel. I'll be sure to link it below. And this is called a wonder window. So we have our piece exactly where we want it to be. So I'm going to take the mirror away. And there is plastic under here. And hopefully I don't shift this too much. I guess it doesn't matter too much. Okay. So there's plastic under here. This is a viewer that I made myself. You just tracing a paper shape that I have. And I purchased, you know, in math class or in high school, maybe junior high or earlier for some of you guys, you had projectors and your teacher would write on the plastic projector stuff. That's all this is. So there's a very thin plastic sheet here. And then I have dry erase markers. So you don't have to get all fancy with this. I'm going to use black just so you can hopefully see it better. And what we are going to do is take our dry erase marker and we're going to trace the important parts of this design. So I've got the little legs. I'm going to trace the whole outer part here. And we want to get, we don't have to get super detailed here. But what this is going to do is help us line up on the next one. So I'm going to do the head, the eyeballs, and maybe the beak. So you've matched your design with your dry erase marker. And one thing you can do is take your paper shape and add glue to the back and glue your paper down. Or the other thing that I think would be easier to do is take your paper shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift my little plastic here. I am going to put my shape in the window. When I take the window away, I have the paper shape where I want it to be. And then I will take my air erase marker and trace around the shape. And when I take the paper away, you can see your line. So it might be a little tough to see, but you have a line left here. And then this can also help you line up the next one. And I think you could get away with doing fussy cutting on this specific piece of fabric, one on top of each other, which is quite rare. Because when I see where the one ends and the next one starts, so this is the flat part of my jewel here, the line is just here. And then again, when I take my wonder window and line it up on the one on top, which is going to be here. Just make sure that I get everything where it should be. I'd say that looks pretty good. And again, I'm going to lift my plastic, put my paper down, take the window away, And then I'm going to trace my shape. This is pretty incredible, actually. So this fabric will Swiss cheese, obviously, but being able to find a print that is spaced enough, especially when it's such a large paper piece that we're going to be using here, it's quite rare to find that. So hopefully you can see. I'll zoom in again here. So this is the bottom of the one that I just traced. And then it's a little difficult to see now, but you can just see the line of the one I traced before. And this is going to be plenty of seam allowance between the two because we have almost an inch, I would say that is, maybe a little bit more. And so even if we cut it in half, that's going to be plenty for our point and more than plenty for the straight edge there. And that's how you can use the Wonder Window. You can use that for anything. And the nice thing is you can just brush it away. You can just brush your design away off the plastic with either your finger or a little cloth or whatever. And then it's good to go. You can use it for the next time. So the next way that I like to do precision is using templates, acrylic templates. So again, you can make your own out of template plastic, which I have done before, or you can use pre-made templates. So I have a couple here. So this is a pre-made one out of template plastic. This is a 2-inch diamond with seam allowance. And again, it doesn't matter that this plastic is a little bent over here because it's, again, whatever. And the nice thing is it's transparent, so you can see where you would be cutting. Again, you can use the mirror for this, or you can just eyeball. And since this is plastic, you could also use the dry erase markers on it as well for similar effect to get what you want out of these prints. But the one thing that I like to do is with the acrylic templates is you can line up. This one specifically is from Lila Bell Lane. This is for the Penelope. And you can line up, it has a center line, which not all of them do. So I want to make sure, say that I get the head of my peacock and a good amount of feathers, and I want his little feet in there. So, so say this is where I want him to be. So what you can do is, again, just eyeball it. So the nice thing about these templates is it has holes in it. So I can just stick my pen in these holes and make my marks. And then I can trace around the shape. And go from there. So you can see, hopefully, you can see there are like little dots and the line that I've drawn. And then if I just wanted to kind of optically do this, I take my template, move to the next peacock, and do the same thing where it's like, okay, I want to make sure that I have my feet in here and the head, and do the exact same thing. So your blocks are going to look essentially the same. It would kind of be tough to notice any real differences. But if you want it to be exact, this is my trick. And I learned this from Brett Lewis, who is also goes by Natural Born Quilter. And I thought this was so clever. And I will actually cut this fabric for this one. So I have my template, and I'm just lining it back up with the lines that I had there. And I'm going to take my little rotary cutter, and I'm going to cut this fabric out along the template. And you want to be careful and watch your fingers. This is also why I like the 18 millimeter for this, because I find it's easier to control. It's like a little pen. So cut my fabric out, and then we're going to pull this up. So now we have one of our pieces. And you can do this before or after, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my template over to the wrong side. I'm going to take some double-sided tape and I'm going to stick it to the back of my template. I do have the grippy spray on here, so it might not stick as well. So I've got 2 strips on there. And now I'm going to take my piece and stick the template back over and make sure it's nice and flat on there. And now my fabric is going to stick to the template. And why this is great is now what I can do is move to the next peacock, say this one. And I'm going to line up the fat so I know kind of where I'm going, but I can't see now because my template is, of course, not see-through. But what I'm going to do is align the print. That looks pretty dang good to me. You already have your template down on top here, of course. So you can just take your rotary cutter and cut around, and then you'll have your second piece. And then you can do that for as many pieces as you want. But I find having the actual print to then line up with the next print gets me pretty exact. This template technique with the fabric on the side is the one that I used for the wolves, the polar bears, the sides of this piece, the wings. It really does come in so handy. And with the help of your mirror, your paper shapes, your own templates, fussy cutting viewers, and magic mirrors, the world is your oyster when it comes to fussy cutting. I hope that helps. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below and I will answer as best as I can. See you next time.